Rarely mentioned over the years in American or mainstream media is the ongoing UFO activity seen occurring in and around Bonnybridge, a small Scottish town in the Falkirk area of the United Kingdom. Since a notable sighting in 1992, it has been at the heart of the Falkirk Triangle, an area rife with UFO activity. With nearly 300 sightings reported annually over the past 3 decades, the town's 9,000 residents have witnessed a staggering number of unexplained aerial phenomena. This consistent and high volume of sightings has cemented Bonnybridge's reputation as a major global hotspot for potential alien activity. I'm on a journey of discovery. I'm seeking answers to some of the most challenging mysteries that face mankind and many nuggets of knowledge that could bring those answers or unsolved cases and tales of the strange and unexplained. This show focuses on recounting cases and stories of unknown phenomena, mysterious events, weird places, and the unexpected. So please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the case we are about to cover today. I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to get straight into it. So, while many might dismiss UFO sightings and extraterrestrial encounters as mere myths, the residents of Bonnybridge, Scotland might beg to differ. And this area is a hotspot for UFO activity, particularly within the region known as the Falkirk Triangle, an imaginary triangle in Falkirk. And reports range from mysterious flashing lights to classic flying saucer shaped craft to alien abductions and even missing cattle as well. And Bonnybridge stands out in this context, earning the title of the Scottish Roswell, which I thought was already amazing right then and there. But remarkably, it's estimated that there are over 300 UFO sightings in that area every single year. In fact, a study suggests that a significant portion of Bonnybridge's residents have observed a UFO at some point in their lives. But, we got to put on our little skeptical hat here because we have to ask ourselves, well, if people are seeing so many UFOs every single year, where are the photos? Where are the videos? Right? And that's where it gets a little dicey because there aren't that many photos you can actually find online. And the ones that you do see are the conventional little blimps in the sky, that little pretty little light. And that's about it. But pushing that aside just a little, I do have some very compelling stories for you and also some photo renditions as well. So let's get into that aspect, starting off with one of the very first sightings that took place November 9th in 1979. And by the way, what we're looking at here is where the triangle is, and I love this little arrow. It says it's about right there. So very close to Edinburgh, which I just wanted to show that to you for those that aren't from Scotland. But getting into this case here, and this extraordinary event unfolded for forestry worker Bob Taylor in Detchmont Law, a wooded area near Livingston, which is right next to Falkirk, by the way. And he was out with his dog, a red setter called Laura, inspecting a relatively new patch of planted woodland near the prominently known as Deer Hill, close to Betchmont Law, just south of M8 motorway. And according to his later testimony, Taylor parked his pickup at the edge of the wood and started walking up a path into the forested area. And after about 500 yards, he came to a clearing where his dog, keep this in mind, seemed to have been spooked by something not far away. And so many stories that we come across where a dog is involved, they are able to sense something or see something faster, sooner than the person. And they always react in this kind of either fearful way or aggressive way. And this dog, Laura, is no exception because Taylor was astonished to see a metallic dome shaped object coming down to hover over the clearing and noticed a smell like burning brakes. Now, that detail is very interesting because when people have a UFO encounter, a UFO sighting, Many times they mention, oh, I didn't hear anything, maybe just a very faint hum, but people rarely, and I'm not going to say all the time, but rather rarely, they don't mention a smell. But in this case, Bob says, no, no, no. I smelled like burning, it smelled like burning brakes in the area. So, thoroughly alarmed, Laura, the dog, then barked furiously at these objects, which began to roll towards Bob, who was himself now very fearful. Take a moment right now to jump into your imagination. And let's say you are in Bob's shoes right here, right now. You're casually in the forest with your dog, doing your job, doing what you have to do. And then you encounter a UFO. In this case, it's a metallic dome shaped object. Your dog is going crazy. What would be going through your mind? How would you be reacting? Would you be scared? Would you be a little bit excited? Keep in mind, this did take place back in 1979. The mentality was a little bit different then, but even so, there was a bit of a hype during this time frame when it comes to UFOs. But the question is, how would you react? Take a second to think about it. Write it in the comments, write it in the live chat. I do try my very best to read all of the comments. Peace of Mind says, burning brakes? William bringing in the joke says, gravity brakes? That's very funny. I agree. That is kind of weird. But at around 10:30 a.m., as he approached a clearing, that's when he saw these objects. And measuring approximately 20 feet in diameter and about 12 feet high, the object suddenly descended towards the ground. And from beneath this large sphere, two smaller spiked spheres emerged, resembling old naval mines. And this is fascinating. These smaller objects rolled towards Taylor, and in his attempt to flee, because this man is running for his life, they caught and tore his trousers, dragging him towards the larger craft. I have another image here for you. Take a look at this. This is how he remembered how years later, but he also drew on when he gave an interview, not too far away from this encounter. And as we see here, we see a dome shaped object, and then we see these two naval mine shaped objects coming below. And so what's fascinating is that he described them as two robots that were shaped like landmines, but with longer spikes that they used for walking, making a suction like noise. And so they got close to Taylor and grabbed him by the legs, hauling him towards the bigger UFO. And then he suddenly loses consciousness. The last thing he was aware of was this hissing sound and an acrid smell emanating from the UFOs. So he lost consciousness for about 20 minutes, and upon regaining his senses, he heard a hissing sound and witnessed the UFO disappearing. The encounter left him temporarily unable to walk, forcing him to crawl nearly 100 yards to his pickup truck. This case right here is one of the craziest ones when it comes to the Falkirk Triangle in and around Bonnybridge. And this is one, there are some really interesting details here that we don't come across that often. First of all, we hear a hissing sound coming from the object. There is the smell of burning brakes. He also mentions an acrid smell emanating from the UFOs. One thing that is consistent, however, is a larger UFO spitting out smaller ones. But in this case, for Bob right here, better known as Robert, he mentions that with this particular mothership type of craft, these smaller ones that were coming out didn't necessarily look like drones or probes that you might hear a little more often in today's time frame, but they looked like landmines and with little spikes coming out of it. I haven't come across that many cases with that sense of detail, but have you? For those that have been researching this for some time, have you come across a story or a case that is similar to this one? Please let me know in the live chat, let me know in the comments as well, because this case, it's just unbelievable. And you can take it or leave it. Is it true? Is it not? That's for you to make up your own mind. I will not tell you one way or the other, but I will mention this, and that is all of the years up until his death, and I believe he passed away in 2007 or 2008, his story never changed. And this is something that we hear a handful of times with people that have had encounters decades ago where their story remains consistent. There are a handful of people where their stories have changed and they're usually called out about that. But the ones where they tell the same story time and time again and it stays consistent, that's remarkable. And you might ask yourself, Christina, why do you say that? If they are telling the truth, their story shouldn't change. Yes and no, because first of all, our minds are faulty. Our memory isn't always the best, even when we think it's absolutely amazing. But on top of that, many people across the world, and not everyone, but the majority of people have lost the art of storytelling. There are certain cultures that practice this art where they have to remember it line per line. They cannot change it, they cannot embellish it in any way. In today's world, when you repeat a story a second time, there are going to be a few little changes here and there. And while your story might be consistently the same, you didn't use all the exact same words because that art is no longer taught. In this case, the story stayed, and that's what's fascinating. But there's more to this because after the incident, the site was extensively examined, and investigators found unexplainable marks on the ground at the clearing. And so the Borders Police, perplexed by the case and noting signs of an attack on Taylor, treated the incident as an assault. And he would later tell the press, quote, I do not think that they were here to do me any harm, but I was very frightened. I'm a countryman and I have never seen anything like this before. I was mesmerized by that thing that was sitting about 12 feet away from me. That quote right there instantly reminds me of Travis Walton and his encounter, where at first he was very frightened. Years later, he mentions, I don't think that they were trying to hurt me. I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And this right here is following that same kind of mentality. Do you think the same? Does it remind you of something else? Let me know. And if you are enjoying the show so far, hit that like button. Right now, we have 217 people watching this live. If you're enjoying the show, just support my work by just hitting that like button. It's so easy to do. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already. But there are so many other cases that we're about to cover in this area. And this next one took place in 1989, so about 10 years later. And during an incident, this was involving a fire crew. And while they were responding to a fire, a red object emerged in the sky. Reportedly, this object approached the fire engine and then swiftly flew away. Shortly thereafter, a second sighting occurred, and this time a white object was observed hovering above Loch Ellering, positioned remarkably close, merely about 8 meters, 26 feet away from the onlookers at the scene. And while this little tidbit is rather short, here we are dealing with a fire crew, with firefighters, and we want to take their word for it if they're going to encounter something bizarre, right? And that's why that particular case is very fascinating. Ah, thank you, David, for correcting me on that. But then there's another one that took place in 1992, and this is a very prevalent year, so remember it, because we'll be covering a few cases during this time frame. But one of the most famous incidents in Bonnybridge's history of UFO sightings occurred in 1992. James Walker, a local businessman, was driving between Falkirk and Bonnybridge when he had to abruptly stop his car on a rural road. In front of him, a star-shaped object emitting a bright light was suspended above the road, effectively blocking his path. Suddenly, the object accelerated away at a very astonishing speed, vanishing into the sky and leaving a shocked and understandably scared walker to quickly leave the scene. Following this encounter, numerous other residents and UFO enthusiasts have stepped forward to recount their own mysterious experiences. But also in 1992, and this one took place August 27th, this also took place on a road, obviously, but this one leads more into an abduction, an alleged abduction. And so the A70, stretched 74.3 miles from Edinburgh to Ayr, is more than just a major motorway in Scotland. It's also the site of one of the country's most renowned UFO encounters, commonly referred to as the A70 Incident. And trust me, you want to listen to this case. This extraordinary event took place August 27th, 1992. Gary Wood and Colin Wright were driving from the outskirts of Edinburgh to Tarbrax when they experienced a highly unusual delay. And according to their account, an alien spacecraft suddenly intercepted their vehicle, leading to a baffled loss of 2 hours of time. They mentioned that the object was smooth, black, and shiny with no windows. And this period remained unaccounted for, leaving them in a state of shock and confusion. And seeking clarity of this bewildering experience, Wood and Wright turned to hypnotic regression. And under hypnosis, as the story goes, Colin remembered the craft being a circular object and was led to a chair where he was stripped naked and underwent a physical examination. He then said he was imprisoned in a glass container where a device had a triangular head and two red lights rose from the floor to scan him. Colin, he remembered this that his right eye was being examined as a red hot poker pain was felt in the center of his eye. And he ended up describing the aliens as disformed and extremely ugly. That right there was interesting, and we're going to get back to that in just a moment. Now, Gary, on the other hand, he said that he remembered a buzzing around him and a black lens that examined his body. He said there were 20 to 30 creatures within the spacecraft, and they had what looked like Native American markings below their eyes. But what scared them was the use of the word sanctuary that one alien repeated to them over and over again. Gary added that the being had said that humans were more advanced than them in many ways, but their potential had been capped. When Gary and Colin were returned to the car and awoke from their experience, they said they found objects swoon across the ground from inside of the car and a white crystallization impacting the vehicle for weeks after the event. Interestingly, this incident is said to have occurred not directly on a 70, but on a smaller county road en route to Barbrax. So, for those traveling along A70, for those that live in Scotland or wish to visit Scotland, it might be worth keeping an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. Let's back it up just a little bit, going to the regression hypnosis. And this is something that can be a little sketchy because when it comes to regression hypnosis, you can use certain words for people to imagine and create their own experiences. In other instances, if you have one that you might trust or one that has hopefully good reviews, right, you're going to be leading yourself better than having someone lead you and create false memories. Now, in this case, let's take Gary and Colin's word for it. Let's say they really did encounter this just for a moment. You don't have to believe it. Let's just use our imagination just for a sec. They say here something we've heard before with other people that have had experiences and or abduction encounters where these extraterrestrials mention that humans have great potential, but either they're not using it or it's being capped. And in this case, they also mention that, and I find that incredible. And you can fill in the gaps on what you think we might be able to do, such as like remote viewing, telekinesis, telepathic capabilities, right? And more. I want to learn how to levitate. That would be so stinking cool. Could I do that? Not anytime soon, but hey, one day I might just wake up and then bam, I'll be levitating. That'd be amazing. But on top of that, what's also interesting here is how they described them going under examination. There have been a lot of alleged cases where people that have been abducted by extraterrestrials, it's frightening, it's terrifying, and it's not fun. And for the most part, it's very, very traumatic. And in many cases, people do not want to remember. In this case, these people were no exception. They went through something that has probably scarred them for the rest of their lives, and they don't have all of the answers. Yes, they did go under regression hypnosis, but the question is that I bet many people ask themselves is why me? Why did I have to go through that? And those questions can just burn up your insides completely until, I mean, even if you will you ever find those answers? That's the big question. Or do you just have to accept it for what it is? That's one of the hardest parts for people that go through something like this, is trying to answer that question of why me? Especially when you have that level of intense fear, right? I think so, at least. But also here, they mention that there were up to 20 to 30 creatures, and Colin states that they were just absolutely ugly beings, but they don't go into detail on how they looked exactly. Did they look like the alleged praying mantis species, or like the greys, or maybe humans, but a bit more deformed, maybe? We weren't given those details, and that's what I wanted to know more about. So I found it a little odd there. But aside from that, this case is one that catches a lot of people's attention. But I promise you, there is more. And if you're enjoying the show, hit that like button. Let's get to 200 likes. Right now, we have 268 people watching this live. Hit that button right below. Getting into our next one. This one takes place in a coal mine in Gorebridge. And this is a small mining village, and it's just off the like it's located just east of the Falkirk Triangle. And many UFO enthusiasts in the area are convinced that Gorebridge hosts a clandestine meeting point for extraterrestrial beings referred to as, quote, the camp. And numerous accounts of alien activity have emerged from around the abandoned mine there, and it's called the Bonny mine. And there is a prevailing belief among some locals that this old coal mine serves as a convergent base for aliens. Now, this theory gained traction after an incident where two individuals, when digging out Christmas trees near the mine, were purportedly chased away by a luminous floating green eye, as in like an eyeball, emanating from the mine's depths. That's weird. And so this area has been a hotbed for other peculiar occurrences as well. And these include unexplained livestock disappearing, mysterious lights hovering over the camp, and reports of alien abductions, as well as sightings of the Greys and even the Men in Black lurking in the nearby woods. But despite the accumulation of witness testimonies and local media attention, plans for formal investigations into the camp were initially set in motion. However, for reasons that remain unclear, the local MP ultimately decided against taking any action. And this decision has left the mysteries of Gorebridge unresolved, with the local community still seeking answers. They're saying, what is going on here? What's interesting about this, and I love using that word because it's just perfect. It's just perfect for this conversation. Interesting, right? is that these miners, at least as the story goes, right, is that they were chased by a green eyeball. Back it up. Let's think about that just for a moment, okay? Because our eyes, get the white part, you get the iris, right? In many cases, people that encounter some kind of UFO, even just a ball of light, it's one solid color. You do not see a center point. But if you look at the sun or any focus of a bright light for too long, at some point you're going to see these little spots that maybe could look like an iris, don't you think? It's a possibility. I'm trying to think of some kind of explanation here. Could this light have been so bright that when these people were staring at it, they started seeing these like black spots, these black blotches in that kind of vicinity, right? Or was it an actual light that looked like an eyeball? Now that's very spooky. That's very Halloween season. But now we're getting into the Christmas season. So luckily it's green. Should have been like green and red, right? To just fit the theme because they were also digging up Christmas trees, by the way. So it was seasonal for them as well. But I just thought I would like to just kind of highlight, get it, that little detail right there because it's something worth mentioning and not something that we hear too often, but it does slightly remind me of Lord of the Rings. Just a tad. Just a little bit. Yeah. Zur says digging up Christmas trees. I found that kind of weird too. Instead of like cutting them, maybe you're just digging them up from the roots up, maybe. It's not as bad, right? Chris says, not the hold on, let me get a little bit wider. Okay. Not the first time I have heard about a green eyeball and a red one too. Rendlesham Forest incident had a red ball eye blinking at the soldiers. Chris, you are absolutely right. In the Holt memo, he mentions exactly that. I like your detailed thinking, my friend. That is awesome. That was a really good point. But there is so much more to this because similar, and let's change my screen here. Here's a little image of the Bonnybridge Triangle here. It's kind of a poopy image, but it's what we got. Now we're going to change it over because do I love this movie. But similar to the enigmatic Bermuda Triangle, the Falkirk Triangle encompassing Bonnybridge is the subject of intense speculation about being a portal to another dimension. And some theories propose that the veil separating different worlds is thinner in the Bonnybridge area compared to other parts of the UK, making it a prime location for crossing between dimensions. Another belief likens the area to the Forth and Clyde Canal, suggesting that an interstellar route or cosmic highway might intercept the Falkirk Triangle, turning it into a sort of celestial layover in the Scottish lowlands. Is that true? I think it's an interesting speculation because whenever you bring portals into this, you know I'm all ears. My ears are nice and peaked up like a little shepherd, right? And I'm going for it because that is absolutely fascinating. But there's another aspect to this, and I'm sharing this image here of in one scene in the Disney movie Brave, she's following these Will-o-of-the-wisps. Before watching that movie as a kid, I had no idea what those were. Okay. Even though I had visited Scotland when I was like 6, I I didn't know about these, and this is fascinating. In this area, there people have seen these will-o'-of-the-wisps, and it's a phenomenon that has intrigued and mystified people for centuries, including in Scotland, obviously, right? Put this other image right here. So these are eerie, flickering lights that are often seen at night, typically over bogs, marshes, or swamps. And the name Will-o'-of-the-wisps comes from wisp, a bundle of sticks or paper sometimes used as a torch, and Will, short for William, thus personifying the phenomenon. In Scotland, as in many other parts of the world, Will-o'-of-the-wisps have been the subject of folklore and legend, and they are often associated with mischievous spirits or fairies leading travelers astray. And that's like the best part about this. In Scottish folklore, these lights were sometimes believed to be spirits of the dead and other supernatural beings. But of course, with this amazing folklore that I love, we gotta bring in the scientific explanation for this. Let's listen to it. Because The scientific explanation for Will-o-of-the-wisps is more mundane, but it's still pretty cool. Okay, bear with me. And they are generally caused by the combustion of gases emitted by decomposing organic matter in wet, low oxygen environments. The primary gas involved is usually methane, which is produced by the breakdown of organic matter by bacteria. When methane comes into contact with the air, it can ignite spontaneously or due to a reaction with other gases, creating the flickering lights. These lights can appear to move as the gases shift, giving the illusion of a sentient moving light. And this movement, combined with the eerie context with the human tendency of trying to personify objects, likely contributed to the legends of the Will-o-of-the-wisps leading people astray. Now, is the scientific explanation always right? No. But in this case, we have to consider it. Could that be the instance for many people's accounts? I don't see why not. But of course, at the same time, people love a mystery. They love the unexpected and they want to believe that more than the science. I'm not going to tell you one or the other. I am just providing you all the information and then you can make up your own mind on what you think. But we simply cannot talk about the Will-o-of-the-wisps without bringing in the scientific explanation with that. But we got to give a big shout out to Brave here for bringing that little aspect, that little myth to the rest of the world. Because again, I just wasn't familiar with it, but now I absolutely love it. And I just imagine all of them having like the cutest little faces and taking you deeper into the forest, and then maybe the forest will eat you or something. Maybe. Forests are pretty spooky places, but they're also very mystical and very amazing. It's a catch-22 here. Give and take. But this simply would not be a mysterious account without the government being involved. And that was, I don't know what that, did you hear that? That was like a big pop. That was kind of spooky. But the issue of UFO sightings in Bonnybridge is taken very seriously by the local community, far from being a subject of lighthearted jest. And rather than dismissing these occurrences as trivial or exploiting them for tourism with alien themed cafes and cute little niche postcards, the townspeople of Bonnybridge approach their unusually high rate of UFO sightings with a significant degree of earnestness. Okay, people also heard that pop too. I thought it was just me. I'm glad you guys caught it because that was whack. That was really weird. But community leaders, including counselors and respected academics, have actively sought answers. And they have written to British prime ministers on multiple occasions, urging the government to initiate some form of investigation into these mysterious sightings. Unfortunately, and there's that word that we all despise, unfortunately, their appeals have largely been met with silence, receiving no response except, oh, we're open-minded and maybe we'll look into it, but we can better boots it's not UFOs or aliens. I don't know why there was a Western accent talking about Scotland, but you know what, to each their own. Then we have to bring in Malcolm Robinson into this. He is a writer and UFO investigator and has been a key figure in these efforts. And he has been deeply involved in many attempts to seek official investigation and acknowledgement of the Bonnybridge UFO phenomena. Robinson shares his insights and experiences in this ongoing quest for understanding, and I have a handful of quotes that I'd like to read to you that I thought are worth mentioning. It starts off with, when the Scottish Parliament was set up, I went to the Scottish Parliament the same and asked them to investigate what was happening in the Bonnybridge area. And as yet, there is no politician or political party or government or prime minister who has taken it on. We have went down to 10 Downing Street with our petition from the people of Bonnybridge, and it fell on deaf ears. All they said was, as these objects did not constitute a threat to the defense of the United Kingdom, there is no need to look into that. Haven't we heard that before? I mention this so much on the show, and people, some despise it, some don't. I'm going to mention it just very quickly. If it is not a threat, people are not going to look into it. The government, the military, they're going to say, I don't need to spend my extra funding, put in extra money, put in your tax dollars to look into something that isn't a threat. Now, are these actually a threat? Depends on who you ask. But if it's not under the threat narrative, people are not going to look into it. And in this case, the UK is no exception. They said the exact same thing to Malcolm Robinson right here. And it continues. Bonnybridge is a hotspot or a window area that seems to attract a higher concentration of UFO reports than anywhere else. The million-dollar question is why? There is nothing significant in the land of Bonnybridge. There are no military air bases or anything. We simply don't know. All we can say is the people are seeing things in the sky that do not conform to conventional aircraft or helicopters. And then it says here that 5% that remains, referring to the 95% that could be explained, the 5% remains that of that 3% could only be our own black project technology, something akin to stealth aircraft that was flying in the skies for many years and leading to false UFO reports. That leaves 1 or 2% that could be new, rare atmospheric phenomena, something akin to ball lightning. The 1% that's left, the flying in the ointment, if you will, that's funny, are these classic UFO sightings that have not just been seen in Scotland, but all over the world. And so here, it's kind of like a jumbly mess. What he's getting into here is while 95% of what people are seeing can be explained, you have 5% that's still in the category of odd, 3% saying, okay, it could be black budget programs. 1 to 2%, they could be like legitimate atmospheric phenomena, leading about 1% in the category of truly unknown. Could it actually be ET? Or have they been here for millions, thousands, hundreds of years, right? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. But of course, we need to start off with the mundane answers before we get into the more extraordinary answers. But there's more to this. Another aspect that I wasn't too familiar with. So for my Scots out there, raise your hand, say a hell yeah, because you might be familiar with this. And the next thing we'll be mentioning is the Stone of Destiny. And so some enthusiasts claim that Bonnybridge has links to the Stone of Destiny, which is purported to be the pillow of Jacob from when he had the vision of Jacob's ladder where the angels were ascending and descending from heaven. Many ufologists make links between aliens and the Stone of Destiny and state that Bonnybridge is further evidence of this. The Stone of Destiny, also known as the Stone of Scone, is a revered artifact steeped in the history and tradition of Scotland. It is a block of red sandstone that has been historically integral to the coronation ceremonies of Scottish and later English and British monarchs. And the origin of the stone are enshrouded in a blend of myth and historical fact, with some legends suggesting it was brought to Scotland in the 5th or 6th century. It's another image right here, and the stone is just right in between the like this little stepping stool and the chair. So traditionally housed in Scone, Albany, near Perth, Scotland, it was used during the coronation of Scottish kings and in a significant historical event in 1296 during the First War of Scottish Independence. Edward I of Scotland took the stone as spoils of war and moved it to Westminster Albany in London. There, it was kept for a very long time and placed in the coronation chair used in the coronation ceremonies of a subsequent English and British monarchs, which is between you and me, that's a pretty big spit in the face. Like, you take this, I'm going to classify it as a holy stone, all right? Just like the holy stone of Clan Rickard from Father Ted. They were using it for their coronations, and then they're like, oh, you do that? Well, I'm going to take it, spit on it, and do the exact same thing here in London. That's pretty brutal if you ask me. But then in 1996, in a gesture acknowledging this symbolism, the stone was returned to Scotland. So it was there from 1296 to 1996. Do the math. That's a very long time. And so then it was returned to Scotland, back to the Westminster Albany Abbey for future coronations since then, and the Stone of Destiny thus embodies the complex and often contentious historical relationships between Scotland and the UK. That is fascinating there. And I got so excited that I stuttered a few times, so please forgive me there. But this is just like this aspect of history. Bring me the goods. This is awesome, right? But what I what I want to know more about here, and for my Scots out there, is why do you think that there is a connection between Bonnybridge and this Stone of Destiny? What is the significance in your mindset between the two? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comments as well. As I mentioned, I do try to read all of the comments because you bring in aspects and ideas and opinions that I might not have considered, along with other people that read your comments might think to themselves, you know what, I didn't think about that. So they are very valuable not only to me, but to everyone else that reads them as well. That is it for today, talking about the Bonnybridge incident, mystery, the Falkirk Triangle. This is crazy and something that between you and me, don't tell anybody, okay? I wasn't familiar with it until I started doing the research and I thought to myself, Scotland is wild. I would revisit any day and mainly to go visit, Nessie, of course. But then to check out this place, this area, because maybe they had their own versions of puck wedgies. And I would like to see one, just like the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, where Puck the Puckwudgie is from. And if you enjoyed the show, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. We do 3 live shows right here on this channel every single week. I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live, all the YouTube members, Patreon supporters, and of course, all of my amazing moderators. You know I simply cannot do this show without you. On Thursday, will be Mysteries with a History at 2:30 p.m. PST with Jimmy Church at Faded Black Radio. You do not want to miss that. And then on Friday is Weekly Strange News. But here's a really cool little tidbit, piece of little information that I have for you. I'm very excited to share. And that is, I got back into making space ambient music on my YouTube channel called Cosmic Portals. So if you need help relaxing, meditating, falling asleep, or just allowing your imagination to wander, consider checking out my music channel. Again, that is called Cosmic Portals, where I make space ambient music. And this is also an invitation for you to subscribe to this channel and to that channel, as you will be the first to see the content that comes out either live or as soon as I finish making music. You'll be able to see that as well. Follow me on Twitter at eyes_on_the_skies for all of my updates and news. Also on my Instagram at Strange Paradigms, where I share pictures and short videos. If you wish to continue this conversation, bring it over to the Discord server with 2,700 other like-minded members. Share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences, and more. That is it for today. I will see you on Thursday. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.